Marlon Humphrey got mysterious on his Baltimore Ravens future, but not in the way you might expect.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher, Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now the number one sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. And thank you to all the everydayers, first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. And on this bonus edition here on Sunday, have a jam-packed show. Gonna obviously talk a lot about Baltimore's head coaching search. We'll do that. We'll do general updates in the final part of the show. We'll also talk about Kyle Van Noy weighing in on the Ravens head coaching search in the second part of the show. But in the first part of the show, and I guess this all kind of relates back to one another, Marlon Humphrey, he talked about his Ravens future and got kind of mysterious on it, but in an interesting way. So we'll talk about Marlon a little bit, and just the state of the team, state of the defense, and, you know, obviously Marlon in particular, but what the future could hold for some of these guys, because, you know, we're entering a new era with this coaching staff, and I think it'll be really interesting to see how everything plays out there. Today's bonus episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Marlon Humphrey, he obviously has his podcast. He reacted to the John Harbaugh stuff and a lot of different stuff on that podcast. But one of the things that he revealed on there was a little bit about his Ravens future. And he, again, with everything like going on, he said, quote, "I did have to ask, am I going to be on the squad?" And that's what, you know, apparently Marlon went and asked. And he said, quote, "He gave me a percentage of if I'm going to be on the team or not be on the team, EDC." So he was talking about Eric DeCosta. He said, and Marlon said, quote, "I like my percentage. There's a percentage. I like my percentage. Anything can happen." And then he was talking about, as of now, he, I guess, liked it. And it's interesting because I'm sure those conversations happen a lot of the time. To me, for Marlon, I know that a lot of the fan base wants him off the team, and his current number, you would have to find at the very minimum for him a new role. You know, Marlon regressed this season. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You can save about $7-8 million by cutting him. That number does go up if there's post-June 1 attached to him. But, I mean, we have to be honest about the situation with Marlon, where, you know, I think he's just more suited to be a safety at this point, maybe more of a slot guy. And just as an outside guy, it doesn't work for him anymore. Like, and there were some conversations about that a little while ago, I think a year or two ago, if I'm remembering it right. But Marlon had like an incredible year 2 years ago in 2024. But this year in 2025, the regression was there. You know, the movement regressed. You know, the coverage skills regressed. He was getting beat on a lot of plays. And I think that Marlon, and I know that people agree with this. I actually talked with Kevin Cusick on his podcast about this a couple days ago. Like, Marlon does have transferable skills, but you just can't keep trotting him out there in the role that he's been in, because it's actively hurting the team. And to me, the number that you would save, that $7 million, is there a guy that would be an upgrade over him at the corner position that you would feel comfortable with? If the answer is yes, then okay, then that conversation can be had and we can see. But if it's at that number with Marlon, it'd have to be a significant upgrade. But at the same time, like, you know, if the plan is to have him out there in 2026 as one of your outside guys and like a heavy rotation guy, like a starter, he's playing almost all the reps out there, I can't get behind that. And the reason being is that, you know, for as much as we talked about Brandon Stevens 2 years ago in 2024 and how he had regressed and he was the one that was getting picked on, man, I mean, it felt like Marlon was the guy that was getting picked on this year. I mean, Nate and Chidobe Awuzie both had better years than Marlon, and it kind of felt like whenever there was a big play, and of course it always feels this way, but it's never actually the case in terms of like big plays being on guys, because everybody gave up big plays this year, but it felt like especially like, for example, that Pittsburgh game, like Marlon on DK Metcalf, Marlon got burnt. A lot of those plays getting beat deep, that was a problem. And again, it's a whole defensive issue, but of course, it does also come down on specific plays, the individual performances. And I don't think this was a Marlon problem per se. It was more of a whole defense problem, but the missed tackles at times were bad. And again, like it just kind of goes to show like this defense for the past 2 years has been underwhelming when it's all said and done. And I think that Marlon wasn't a big part of that 2 years ago. He did have his moments, but again, he had a great year 2 years ago. But this past year, I can't justify him on the number he's at playing the same role and hurting the team. Now, again, if it's a safety slash slot type of thing, then okay. But are you going to pay Marlon all that money to be that like rotational safety player? Because you have Malaki and Kyle Hamilton. Now, can Marlon be a guy that helps you free up Kyle Hamilton a little more? That's interesting. I mean, obviously, Kyle moves all over the place. When Kyle played slot, though, it was always like default, okay, Marlon's going to go back to the outside. Could that default now be, okay, Marlon's going to be in that safety role? I'd be very curious because I don't personally believe Alohi Gilman's going to come back. I would love our Darius Washington to come back, and then you can have more versatility there. But I'd be curious to see what they try to do with Marlon. And again, this is very common, by the way, with some of these older players. And I'm not saying Marlon is like 35 years old because he's not. But, we see it. We saw it last year at Pittsburgh with Jalen Ramsey. Like, it's something that does make sense, and it's very common to do. And I think we also have to be honest about the fact that, like, this new coaching staff that comes in is, it's going to be different. And that's kind of what Marlon talked about. He said with the Harbaugh stuff, he said he knew there was a chance, but he didn't think it would happen. And he said, quote, now it's going to be pretty weird, or not weird, just different is what he ended up saying. And yeah, I mean, it is going to be different where like some of the guys that were favorites of the previous coaching staff are not going to be favorites of this coaching staff. And this new coaching staff might look at numbers and go to Eric DeCosta, or I don't know who they're going to report to, but whoever they report to, and be like, yeah, this guy doesn't really fit what you do on defense, or doesn't fit the system, doesn't fit the scheme, or whatever it is. Or, we want to get some of our own guys in here. And it's going to be a different atmosphere. It's going to be different in terms of the comfortability that all these guys had, the coaching staff, the front office, the players. You still have the front office with DeCosta and everybody. The roster is what it is, but the coaching staff, they're going to come in here and have new ideas. That's the whole point, right? They're going to have a new system, have new ideas. And part of that is just going to be the fact that, some guys that would be here under Harbaugh next year will not be in Baltimore under the new coaching staff. So maybe Marlon is one of those guys. Maybe he's not. According to what Marlon had to say, he said he likes his percentage. So again, it's not set in stone he's coming back or not, because there are savings, and it's not insignificant savings the Ravens could get by cutting him. And, based off of what he said, I'm just trying to go through the scenarios of like, okay, how can Marlon be a help to this team next year if that percentage, and he says he likes it, if that percentage is positive for him and he's back, how can the Ravens make it a positive 2026 for Marlon? I think a different role, but you're going to have those conversations on a lot of guys for sure. But up in the second part of the show, we'll talk about what Kyle Van Noy had to say about the Ravens head coach situation. So be sure to stay tuned. We got plenty coming your way here on this bonus edition of Locked On Ravens. First of the show is brought to you by Ultimate QB Football Legend. Hey guys, draft picks positions are set and so many teams are looking for their franchise QB. Ever wish to become a pro QB, getting drafted first overall by the Ravens? Well, now you can. There's a mobile game just for you called Ultimate QB Football Legend. In this game, you step into the cleats of a number one draft pick quarterback, and it's your job to lead your team to greatness to help turn a failing franchise into a dynasty. This is the number one QB career mode game on the mobile app stores, and it introduces the most realistic environment with full career control. You'll deal with the ups and downs of a QB career, from rookie nerves to playoff drama, and every choice shapes your journey. Ultimate QB is totally free to play, has no ads, and works 100% offline. Perfect for when you want to sneak in a quick game or two on the go. Just head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search for Ultimate QB in your app store. We've got something special just for you guys. Use the promo code LOCKEDON, all caps, in the game store to get a free boost at the start of your career. Ultimate QB Football Legend, QB1, it's your legacy. And the show is brought to you by Home Chef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules. Having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. That's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. It's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule, 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or quick lunches. Over 30 weekly options, including family-sized meals and different dietary choices. Recipes are simple but feel elevated, even restaurant quality, with dishes co-created by chefs like Gordon Ramsay. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. Moving along, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this bonus Sunday edition of the show. Thanks so much for being here. Hopefully you've enjoyed your weekend up to this point. Had a couple of good games. Well, I guess the Bills-Broncos was really good. The Seahawks-49ers was more of a beatdown than anything else. But still, playoffs are here. Ravens, unfortunately, not in it. But we still have you covered here on Locked On Ravens. We're year-round, even in the offseason. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage and content. So the regular show, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We also do have bonus episodes like this on the weekends when there are headlines to talk about. We also do instant reaction shows after big news and after games when we're in season. Also, we have the watch-alongs during the season and the Locked On Ravens Squad show twice a week. Myself, Sam Njoku, and former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail breaking it all down Mondays and Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Plus, if you want some extra add-on content, we have the Everydayer Club, which is awesome. You can check out the link in the description below, or you can go to the Locked On website and find everything there on the Locked On Ravens page. You get exclusive access to Discord server, one-on-one text access with me, weekly Q&As, and the whole 9 yards. All right, let's talk a little. And actually, one more thing about Marlon before we get into what Kyle Van Noy had to say about the head coaching search. Marlon has been a turnover machine for the majority of his career. Now, again, that doesn't always translate every single season, but Marlon found himself in the right place at the right time. It felt like last season on a lot of these plays. He had 4 interceptions, which actually is second most he's ever had in a season in his career. The forced fumbles have kind of gone by the wayside after his 2020. He actually hasn't had a year above 2 forced fumbles since 2020. That 2020 year he had 8. But again, there are still valuable skill sets that Marlon brings to the table, but it's just about the number that he's at. And, where the Ravens are at the corner position right now, that is a sneaky need for them. That and wide receiver both are sneaky needs for them. And part of it is because I just think you need to reevaluate Marlon's role with this team, whether that is he's off of it altogether or, you move him into that safety/slot role. But on the outside, it wasn't great this year. So that's something that you do have to take into account. And translatable skills are really good. Again, Ken and I talked about that on his show, and he has them, but you're going to have to probably move him around a little bit more here. In fact, not a little, a lot more here if you want to keep him on the team. And according to what Marlon said, I guess he likes his chances. So we'll have to see how that all unfolds. Now, Kyle Van Noy is another guy who is, status up in the air. He's a free agent this year. Who knows if the Ravens bring him back or not. But, Kyle Van Noy, he knows a lot about being on this Ravens team the past handful of seasons. And look, his tenure in Baltimore overall, if it does end up ending, was very successful. But he talked about Baltimore's head coach search. And I thought what he had to say was really interesting. He was on the game day crew, the game day morning crew before the divisional round. And he talked about kind of what Baltimore is going to be looking for in his eyes in their next head coach. Obviously, there's been a lot of topic conversations, and actually there were reports earlier in the day on Saturday that the Ravens were trying to get Kevin Stefanski, former Browns head coach, back in the building for a second interview by Wednesday. But he ended up, all the reports are, he's going to be the next head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. So that is one candidate off the board, which I know. I mean, we talked about Stefanski for a couple times. I know Q was going to be ecstatic about that. He was not on the Kevin Stefanski train, but that is one candidate down off the board. And Stefanski was a very popular name in this cycle. So Atlanta gets him, but Van Noy talked about the Harbaugh situation. He said, quote, "It did surprise me. Everything surprised me how it happened so fast. Harbaugh is a CEO. He's the epitome of what it's like to be a Raven. He is the one who made that play like a Raven attitude." And I do think that some people like I've seen it on social media. Some people are just tired of that, if we're being honest, of the like play like a Raven and all that stuff. Like I think part of him being gone is, everything like that being gone and kind of the new coach coming in and being able to establish their culture. And that's kind of what Van Noy talked about in terms of the culture in Baltimore. Now, in terms of what he thinks the Ravens want, he mentioned the press conference that Steve Bisciotti and Eric DeCosta had. He said, quote, "They want an X's and O's type of coach. When I see Mr. Bisciotti's comments in the press conference, who are the guys that could do that? The Mike McDaniel of the world, the Brian Flores, because they're replacing a CEO who's been there, who's established a culture. So their culture is set, or so the culture is set. Now they just want an X's and O's coach to come in there and do what they need to do with Lamar Jackson and the guys that they have on defense, led by Kyle Hamilton. I'm excited to see where they go." And he talked about, Steve Bisciotti, and he had a lot of very glowing words about Steve and Mr. Bisciotti, as he called him, over the course of this, and how competitive that he is, and he wants to win. And he kind of said, like, look, he has high expectations, and when those expectations weren't set, like, he did what he had to do. Like that's kind of the message that Kyle Van Noy sent there, which, look, I agree with. I mean, this team coming into the year was most people, I mean, I guess some people, not most people, but a lot of people, Super Bowl pick. It was mine. And that wasn't even like being biased with the purple glasses. It was like, all right, the roster is what it is. And, they have a lot of opportunities here. But when you have a year like you had and you have those expectations, yeah, it's not going to be great. So I'm on board with what Kyle Van Noy is saying here, though. I think he is correct, where Steve Bisciotti's comments definitely favored, because a lot of people are talking about Clint Kubiak, who, by the way, was awesome. That Seattle team was awesome in that San Fran game. Or, a guy like a Jesse Minter, like those younger coaches who Minter's been linked to Baltimore. We talked about that yesterday. And, Clint Kubiak, somebody who also was a very popular coach this cycle. But Steve Bisciotti's comments more so pointed towards the Mike McDaniels and the Brian Flores's, Robert Saleh's, et cetera, even the Stefanskis. Like, those are the types of guys, the experience. And the experience is one thing. Sam Njoku, we have him on every week. He's part of the squad show, like I mentioned, and he was on with us on Friday. And he was kind of like establishing, based off what he's heard through the grapevine and, where the Ravens would potentially go. The dark horse name that he had that he said is interviewed very well is Davis Webb. And that's just not in Baltimore. Apparently he's interviewed well everywhere, and he's a hot commodity. So those types of guys bring a certain amount of risk in terms of, like, okay, either they've never called plays before like Davis Webb, or they've never been in the head coach chair before. And I think that Steve Bisciotti, a lot of people kind of look at those comments, and I don't view it this way, but I've seen some people who do, for some of these, I guess you'd call them retreads, or, guys who have already been in that head coaching seat before. Like, to me, they were given some raw deals. Like, I think that Saleh in New York and McDaniel in Miami. Now, there's always context, and those coaches do. Like, there's part of that story is, they're blaming it. Like, there is blame to go around everywhere. But it's not like we can sit here and say, oh yeah, like Mike McDaniel had prime Lamar Jackson there, or Kevin Stefanski. Now, the Stefanski thing was interesting because I think that quarterback situation and how it was handled was not great by him. And I would have been worried if he came into Baltimore a little bit in that mind. Now, 2-time coach of the year with the Browns, like, okay, but even still, like, that would have worried me. Like, but there's always blame. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's always blame to put on everyone. And that's why I never want to give 100% of the blame pie, as I call it, to one particular person or player or coach. Everybody's involved in it. But at this point, I think it would be more of a risk to add one of those younger guys as your head coach. What I will say, though, is that there is a path where that works. And I've said this all the time. Like, if it's a Minter, I'm totally cool with that. Like, I think Minter's really awesome. I think Kubiak's awesome. Davis Webb would be a much different story because, as Sam talked about with me on Friday, that seems more like a Zach Orr situation where, like, you're taking a huge risk with a guy who is very, like, the coaching experience is limited. He played quarterback for a long time. He's been around the league, but again, there's a difference there. But you can build a strong staff where, if it's not a McDaniel at head coach, or a Flores or a Saleh or any of those veteran guys, you can still build a really, like, if it's Minter, McDaniel can be a really strong offensive coordinator for you. If it's Kubiak, you can get a strong DC in there like a Jim Schwartz to help you out. Like, I'm banking on the fact that if they hire a young guy, and even if they hire a vet, like, they're going to have one really strong, like, high level coordinator, like top of the market guy. So it'll be like it'd be two hires essentially, in my opinion, that I'd be really excited about there. And again, there'd be more obviously, but like if it's Schwartz and Kubiak, or if it's Minter or McDaniel, like those guys all, there are a lot of pairings here that we can work with, but I do agree with Van Noy. Now, the thing is that with the culture, what he said, yes, the culture's been established, but I do think the new coach is going to want to come in there, like I said earlier, and make a culture of his own, culture of their own. That to me is what I truly believe. And, I think that's okay. Like, yes, the Ravens, like that culture that was established by John Harbaugh, like it worked for a really long time. And something that Baltimore's been known for is their culture. I think that continues. Just because John Harbaugh's gone doesn't mean the culture goes away, but I think that there will be add-ons to that culture that whoever comes in as the head coach is going to make. But the X's and O's, I think, are a very important aspect of this, because I think the Ravens are done with that CEO type of approach, the delegator approach. They want somebody to come in there, take on a side of the ball, and there's still going to be delegation, obviously, but, I feel like they want to play caller offensively or defensively is their next guy. So coming up in the final part of the show, we'll talk about some head coaching updates. We'll also dive into a little bit about the latest rumblings around the Ravens. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up on the show. First, the show is brought to you by GameTime. NFL season is in full swing, and there's nothing like being at the game, the crowd noise, the energy, and cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. The frustrating part has always been getting tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices change right at checkout. That's why the GameTime app gives the advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. The app is incredibly intuitive. Browsing, comparing, and buying tickets took just minutes. One of my favorite features is being able to see the view from my seat before buying, so there are no surprises. And the zone deal stood out to me because you pick the section, and GameTime picks the seats, and you save even more. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today and get back to being there live. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The divisional round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profile boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks and apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Continuing on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this bonus Sunday edition of the show. Thanks again for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. If you have a friend or a family member who's a Ravens fan, wants some daily Ravens coverage, be sure to send them over here, as we're building up awesome communities here on Locked On Ravens video form, audio form, social media. You can follow me on social media, by the way, at CashTrucker34, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. Plus, we're also doing the Facebook thing this year, so you can follow me over on Facebook at Kevin Oestreicher. But all right, head coaching updates, and honestly, just like NFL updates in general. Like the Bills and the Broncos game was unreal. There's a lot of discourse about Josh Allen and a lot of discourse about Lamar Jackson, even with that, because Josh Allen had 4 turnovers in this game. And, I've seen some of the excuses pouring already. And again, like this is something to me where I have so much respect for Josh Allen, just like I have so much respect for Lamar Jackson, the 2 awesome quarterbacks, but they're just talked about differently. Like it is what it is. And, to me, it's not fair the way that both of them are treated, because if Lamar had a game like that, that discourse would be crazy. It'd be crazy. And again, like Josh owned it in his press conference, said he felt like he let his team down, which I thought was really big of him to do. But, it's going to be very telling, I guess, with some of what the national media says over the next couple of days, because again, like Lamar has been destroyed for things. And even like that Mark Andrews play, the divisional where he hit him, like it was a good throw. And there are national media people saying, oh, well, that throw could have been better. I'm like, what else do you want him to do? And then, Josh has a couple, like he missed the game-winning throw to Dawson Knox and a couple of others. So, like, again, just call it both ways. That's all I'm saying. If you're not going to criticize Josh, then don't criticize Lamar. If you're going to criticize Lamar, then criticize Josh. Just call it both ways. That's all. Whichever route you want to take, that's what I'm saying there. Because, again, I think that you shouldn't criticize either. Like, again, criticism is fair on the throws that they don't make. Like, again, the Dawson Knox throw, the interception throws. And again, Lamar has plays like that too. Like, I'm not saying Lamar's a perfect quarterback because guess what? Nobody is. Nobody's a perfect quarterback. But again, the discourse is just crazy. And I'm interested to see how that all plays out over the course of the next couple of days. As we mentioned, that Seahawks game was wild. And Robert Saleh, man, it was the Kubiak versus Saleh Bowl for Ravens head coach, and Saleh, he did not get the better of Kubiak, and it was evident, from the first play of the game, literally with Rashid Shaheed taking the kickoff for a touchdown. So Kubiak with a heck of an audition for the Ravens head coaching job or any other coaching job, because I think that he will get one this cycle. But like I talked about, Kevin Stefanski going to Atlanta, that's a name off the board for Baltimore. They completed a couple of interviews, Chris Shula and Nathan Scheelhaus. So I think only Joe Brady, if I'm not mistaken, Bill's offensive coordinator, is the name that's been reported that hasn't had an interview yet. So the second wave of interviews, I believe, is probably happening. And like, at least it'll start to trickle in who's getting second interviews. Like it did with Stefanski. That'll probably happen in the next couple of days. And I'm excited to kind of see what that all looks like, because like I said in the second part of the show, there are a lot of pairings that can work here. There's not like a Ben Johnson this cycle. There's not a Mike McDonald this cycle. But I do think that like there are multiple paths to success and multiple paths to a Super Bowl here with the guys that are available. Mike McDaniel's getting a lot more head coaching buzz. Now, the report that we talked about a couple of days ago, which is really intriguing to me, is, the fact that he would favor there's potential that he would favor a much better situation as an offensive coordinator over a so-so situation as a head coach, which I personally think is the right decision. I know that guys will probably just jump at some head coaching opportunities just to be a head coach. That happens. But McDaniel, like him in Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, like I'm if it's a Flores McDaniel or if it's Saleh McDaniel with the San Fran connection, I still really do like that. I still really do like that. Minter McDaniel, because again, how this is going to work is the way that the head coach, whether it's an offensive or defensive guy, that side of the ball, that coordinator position is probably going to be more of a young up and coming coach. Like I've said this before, like to be honest, Zach Orr would be the perfect candidate for them to have as DC if like Jesse Minter or Brian Flores or Robert Saleh got the head coaching job. And I'm not talking about Zach Orr now, but just the idea of a younger up and coming coach, hasn't had play calling experience. Like that should have been the role for Zach Orr, is a DC on a team that had a defensive play caller. But that wasn't the case. But I think that either way, you're going to get a guy that's a younger up and coming coach in that either OC or DC role based off of what, they end up doing, who they end up hiring. But the fact they're going through all these names gives me a lot of hope that they're doing this the right way, because they want a guy that's going to be there for 10 plus years. They want the next John Harbaugh. And I'm not talking about like, oh, he has to be, the unknown special teams coordinator that John was coming out of Philadelphia with the Eagles and everything. But they want to make sure that they get this thing as right as they can to not have whoever this is flame out in 4 years. And, by that point, Lamar's window is even closed. Like the door is even more closed, because Lamar right now, it's still open. It's really open. Lamar's only 29, but he's also not 25 anymore. So you need to be able to maximize this window. That is the number one priority. This head coach absolutely needs to be able to maximize this Lamar Jackson window, because as much as I would like it, it's not going to last forever, because unfortunately nothing does. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in to the show. On the way out, be sure to like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, we'll be back with regularly scheduled programming, 6 a.m. Eastern time. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.